I watched through my kitchen window as the snowplow drove past my house for the third time that morning, and each time it left a mountain of heavy, wet snow blocking my driveway. But this wasn't the city's doing. This was deliberate, calculated, and executed by none other than Brenda Crawford, the HOA president who had made it her personal mission to make my life miserable ever since I painted my front door navy blue instead of the approved colonial gray. My name is Sullivan, and I had been living in the Meadowbrook Heights subdivision in Naperville, Illinois, for exactly 8 months when the Great Snow Door incident occurred. It was February 2025, and we had just been hit with one of those massive winter storms that dumps 2 feet of snow overnight and shuts down half the city. I had spent 3 hours that morning clearing my driveway with my snowblower, my back aching and my fingers numb despite the thick gloves. The pile of snow sat neatly on my lawn, away from the street, away from my neighbor's property, exactly where it was supposed to be according to city ordinances. Then I saw her. Brenda Crawford, sitting in her oversized white SUV, talking to a man in a pickup truck with a plow attachment. I recognized him as her nephew, Derek, who ran a small snow removal business on the side. They were pointing at my house, and I felt my stomach drop. I knew that look. It was the same look she had given me during the last HOA meeting, when she fined me $200 for having my trash cans visible from the street on a non-collection day, even though it was collection day, and the truck just hadn't come yet. I grabbed my phone and started recording, some instinct telling me I would need evidence of whatever was about to happen. Sure enough, Brenda's nephew pulled his truck into position at the end of my driveway, angled his plow and began pushing snow. But he wasn't clearing anything. He was deliberately pushing massive amounts of snow directly against my garage door. The wet, heavy snow piled up, 5 feet, 6 feet, creating a solid wall of ice and slush that completely blocked my garage. I ran outside, still in my house slippers, my phone held high. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" Derek looked at Brenda, who rolled down her window with a smile that could freeze water faster than the temperature outside. "Good morning, Connor. We're just helping with snow removal for the neighborhood. HOA services." "That's not snow removal." "You're pushing snow against my garage door." Brenda pulled out a clipboard, because of course she had a clipboard. According to HOA Bylaw Section 12, Paragraph 4, all snow removal must be conducted in a manner that maintains neighborhood aesthetics. Your snow pile on the lawn was unsightly and violated our landscaping guidelines. We're redistributing it to a less visible location. Against my garage door, that's not a less visible location, that's property damage. She shrugged, and that casual gesture made my blood boil more than anything else. "Take it up at the next HOA meeting. We meet the 3rd Thursday of every month. Have a wonderful day, Connor." Derek finished his work, creating what looked like an igloo entrance against my entire garage door, and drove away. Brenda followed, her SUV kicking up snow as she left. I stood there, shaking with anger and cold, my phone still recording the aftermath. The snow was packed so tightly against the garage door that I couldn't even see the bottom panel. It had to weigh several tons, all that wet, heavy snow compressed by the plow blade. I went back inside and called my wife, Jennifer, who was at work in downtown Chicago. "You're not going to believe what just happened." After I explained the situation, there was a long silence on the other end. Then, "Did you get it on video?" "Every second." "Good. Call our insurance company and a lawyer. I'm so sick of this woman." She was right to be sick of Brenda. In the 8 months we had lived in Meadowbrook Heights, Brenda had fined us for the navy blue door, which was apparently not on the approved color list that was never given to us when we bought the house. Fined us for having decorative shutters that were half an inch too wide. Sent us a violation notice because our mailbox post was weathered and needed repainting. Attempted to fine us because our grass was 3.5 inches tall instead of the required 3 inches, which I proved wrong with a ruler while she stood there timing me with a stopwatch. Filed a complaint with the city about our recycling bins, claiming they were an eyesore, which the city dismissed. And sent us a nastogram about having a wreath on our door in January, stating that holiday decorations must be removed by January 5th, and it was now January 7th. The woman was obsessed with rules, power, and making everyone around her miserable. Several neighbors had warned us about her when we moved in, but I had foolishly thought I could just keep my head down and avoid trouble. That strategy had clearly failed. I called our homeowner's insurance company first. The agent, a patient woman named Rita, listened to my story and sighed. "Mr. Sullivan, this is definitely unusual, but if there's damage to your garage door, it would actually fall under the snowplow driver's liability insurance, not yours." "Do you have his information?" He's the HOA president's nephew. "I have video of the whole thing." "Perfect. Don't touch the snow yet. We need to document everything. I'm going to send an adjuster out this afternoon. In the meantime, get an estimate from a garage door company for any potential damage. If the door is damaged, we'll pursue a claim against his insurance." Next, I called a lawyer. Jennifer had gotten a referral from someone at her office who had dealt with HOA disputes before. The attorney's name was Marcus Webb, and he had a reputation for not tolerating HOA overreach. "Connor Sullivan, you said." Marcus's voice was deep and steady. "Meadowbrook Heights HOA. Yes, how did you know?" "Because you're the third person from that subdivision to call me in the past year. Brenda Crawford is making quite a name for herself. Tell me everything." I spent 20 minutes explaining not just the snow incident but the entire 8-month saga of harassment. Marcus listened without interrupting, and I could hear him typing notes. "Okay, here's what we're looking at," he said when I finished. "First, the immediate issue. Deliberately pushing snow against someone's garage door could constitute property damage, trespassing, and potentially harassment. The video evidence is crucial. Second, the pattern of behavior you're describing sounds like targeted harassment, which could be grounds for a restraining order if it continues. Third, there might be violations of Illinois HOA laws here. They can enforce reasonable rules, but they can't weaponize those rules to harass homeowners. I'll need copies of all the violation notices, your HOA bylaws, and that video. I can get you everything. Good. My fee is $300 an hour, but I'll cap the initial consultation and review at $1,000. If this goes to litigation, we'll discuss a contingency arrangement. Fair. It was a lot of money, but at this point I was ready to pay it. Fair. "One more thing," Marcus added. "Don't engage with Brenda directly. All communication goes through me from now on. She's going to try to provoke you, get you to violate some obscure rule so she can fine you or take further action. Don't give her the satisfaction." After hanging up, I went back outside to take photos and measurements. The snow pile against my garage was massive, at least 7 feet high and extending about 4 feet from the door. I could hear creaking sounds coming from inside, which made my stomach turn. The garage door was a standard 2-car steel door, not designed to withstand several tons of wet snow pressing against it from the outside. My neighbor, Tom Martinez, came over while I was documenting everything. Tom was retired in his mid-60s and had lived in the neighborhood for 15 years. He shook his head as he approached. "I saw the whole thing from my window. I cannot believe she actually did that." "You saw it? Watched her direct that truck exactly where to push. Connor, she's lost her mind. She's always been strict about the rules, but this past year, she's gone completely off the rails. I think the power went to her head. Has she done anything like this to you? Tom laughed bitterly. Last month she tried to fine me because my snow shovel was visible from the street. My snow shovel, Connor. It was leaning against my garage, and she said it violated the no visible outdoor equipment rule. I told her where she could stick her fine. Did you have to pay it? Hell no. I've got a lawyer on retainer now just for HOA stuff. Sent her a letter and she backed down, but not before she tried to put a lien on my house over $200. A lien on his house. That was serious. In Illinois, HOAs could place liens on properties for unpaid fines, and if those liens weren't resolved, they could eventually force a foreclosure. It was a massive amount of power to give to a neighborhood organization, and clearly Brenda was abusing it. The insurance adjuster arrived around 2 that afternoon. His name was Paul, and he had been doing this job for 20 years. He took one look at the snow pile and whistled. That's deliberate, all right. No snow plow operator accidentally creates that kind of pile against a structure. Let me get some measurements and photos. Then we need to carefully remove some of this snow and check for damage. Paul worked methodically, documenting angles, measurements, and the weight distribution. He had a device that could estimate the weight of the snow pile based on density and volume. I'm calculating roughly 4 to 5 tons of snow against this door. That's serious pressure. Even if the door isn't completely destroyed, I'd be shocked if there isn't significant damage. We began carefully removing snow with shovels, working from the top down. As we cleared, the damage became apparent. The garage door panels were buckled inward, the bottom section completely bent and twisted. The automatic opener mechanism inside had snapped, unable to handle the pressure. The door frame itself was cracked on one side. Total loss, Paul said, taking more photos. This door needs complete replacement, including the opener and potentially some frame repair. I'm estimating $12,000 to $15,000 in damage. I felt sick. $12,000 to $15,000 because Brenda Crawford didn't like my snow pile. The good news, Paul continued, is that this is absolutely covered by the plow operator's liability insurance. With your video evidence showing the deliberate nature of the act, there's no question of liability here. I'll file the claim against Derek Crawford's business insurance this afternoon. You should get a settlement offer within a few weeks. What do I do in the meantime? I can't use my garage. Get quotes from garage door companies. You'll need to coordinate the repair once the claim is settled. Document everything. Keep all receipts if you need to rent storage for your cars or anything like that. Those costs can be included in the claim. After Paul left, I called 3 garage door companies for quotes. The estimates ranged from $11,000 to $16,000, depending on the quality of the door and opener system. I went with a mid-range option, $14,000, from a company that could do the work within 2 weeks of approval. That evening, Jennifer came home to find me sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork, estimates, photos, and violation notices from the past 8 months. She hugged me from behind. How bad is it? $14,000 in damage. But the insurance adjuster says it's covered under Derek's liability insurance. The lawyer thinks we might have a harassment case against Brenda, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to need therapy after all this is over. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. I've been thinking about this all day. Maybe we should just move. Sell the house, get out of this neighborhood, start over somewhere without an insane HOA president. No. The word came out harder than I intended. No, we're not moving. We bought this house because we loved it. The neighborhood is great, except for Brenda. Our neighbors are nice, the schools are good, your commute is manageable. We're not letting one petty tyrant drive us out of our home." Jennifer nodded slowly. "Okay, then we fight. Then we fight." The next morning, I received an email from the Meadowbrook Heights HOA. It was from Brenda, naturally, and it was CC'd to the entire HOA board and several neighbors. "Dear Mr. Sullivan, it has come to our attention that you have allowed snow accumulation against your garage door in violation of property maintenance standards outlined in the HOA Bylaws Section 8, Paragraph 12. You are hereby fined $500 for this violation. The fine must be paid within 30 days, or a lien will be placed on your property. Additionally, the snow must be removed within 48 hours, or an additional fine of $100 per day will be assessed. Sincerely, Brenda Crawford, HOA President." I read the email 3 times, my jaw clenched tighter each time. She was fining me for the snow that she had deliberately pushed against my garage door. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. I forwarded the email to Marcus Webb with the subject line, "You're not going to believe this." He called me back within an hour. "Oh, I believe it. This is actually good for us, Connor. She's documented her own harassment. She knows she damaged your property and now she's trying to fine you for it. This is going to be Exhibit A in our case. What do I do about the fine? Nothing. Don't pay it. Don't respond to it. I'll handle all communication. I'm drafting a cease and desist letter right now that will make it very clear that any further harassment will result in legal action. I'm also going to request an emergency meeting with the HOA board to discuss Brenda's conduct. Will that work? Depends on the board. If they're reasonable people, they'll rein her in. If they're enablers, we'll go to court. Either way, you're not paying that fine." The cease and desist letter went out that afternoon via certified mail. Marcus also sent copies to each HOA board member individually. The letter was 5 pages long and meticulously detailed every interaction I had had with Brenda over the past 8 months, the snow incident, the property damage, the retaliatory fine, and the pattern of harassment. It concluded with a demand that all fines be rescinded, that Brenda cease all contact with me except through official HOA business conducted properly, and that the HOA board investigate her conduct. The response came faster than expected. That evening, I received a phone call from Richard Oakes, another member of the HOA board. Richard was in his 50s, worked in finance, and lived 3 streets over. "Connor, it's Richard Oakes from the HOA board. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" "Sure, but my attorney advised me to document all conversations. Do you mind if I record this?" "No, that's fine. Look, I'll be direct. I just read the letter from your attorney and I'm frankly horrified. I had no idea Brenda was engaging in this kind of behavior. The other board members and I are calling an emergency meeting tomorrow night to address this situation." "You didn't know about the fines she's been sending me," Richard sighed. "Brenda has been handling most of the day-to-day enforcement on her own. We get monthly reports, but they're usually just summaries. She told us you had been repeatedly violating minor rules and that the fines were standard enforcement. She never mentioned anything about snow being pushed against your garage or damage to your property. She deliberately had her nephew push tons of snow against my garage door. I have video evidence. The damage is over $14,000. I saw the video. Your attorney included stills from it in his letter. Connor, I'm going to be honest with you. Several board members, including myself, have been concerned about Brenda's increasingly aggressive enforcement tactics. We've had multiple complaints from other residents. But she's been the HOA president for 7 years, and she's always been so organized and on top of things that we've given her the benefit of the doubt. This incident crosses a major line. We need to address it. What does that mean exactly? It means we're going to have a vote tomorrow night on whether to remove her as president and potentially from the board entirely. I can't promise the outcome, but I can promise it will be taken seriously. In the meantime, consider all outstanding fines against you suspended pending review. After the call ended, I felt a small glimmer of hope. Maybe the system could work. Maybe reasonable people would prevail. But I had been disappointed before, so I wasn't counting on anything. Jennifer made popcorn, and we spent the evening reviewing the video footage over and over, making sure we had everything we needed. The video was damning. It clearly showed Brenda directing Derek, pointing at my garage, and then watching as he deliberately pushed snow against the door. There was no way to interpret it as an accident or misunderstanding. The next evening, I attended the emergency HOA board meeting. It was held in the community center at Meadowbrook Heights, a small building near the neighborhood entrance that was used for meetings and events. Marcus Webb came with me, his briefcase full of documentation. About 15 other residents showed up as well, which was unusual for a board meeting. Word had spread. Brenda sat at the front table with the 4 other board members: Richard Oakes, Susan Peltier, David Chang, and Margaret Wheeler. Brenda looked calm and confident, her hair perfectly styled, wearing a business suit like she was heading to a corporate meeting instead of a neighborhood HOA gathering. Richard called the meeting to order. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. We're here to discuss serious allegations of misconduct against our HOA president, Brenda Crawford. Connor Sullivan and his attorney are here to present their concerns. Connor, the floor is yours." Marcus stood instead. "Thank you, Richard. My name is Marcus Webb, and I represent Connor Sullivan. Over the past 8 months, Mr. Sullivan has been subjected to a pattern of harassment and overzealous enforcement by Mrs. Crawford that culminated in deliberate property damage this past week." He proceeded to lay out the entire case, complete with printed photos, copies of all the violation notices, the video footage on a laptop connected to a projector, and the insurance adjuster's damage assessment. The room was silent as the video played, showing Brenda directing Derek to push snow against my garage door. When the buckled garage door photos appeared on screen, several people gasped. "This is not normal HOA enforcement," Marcus concluded. "This is targeted harassment that resulted in over $14,000 in property damage. Mr. Sullivan is pursuing a claim against Derek Crawford's liability insurance for the damage, but the question before this board is whether Brenda Crawford should remain in a position of authority given her conduct." Brenda stood up, her face flushed. "This is a witch hunt. I was simply enforcing the rules that this community agreed to when they purchased their homes. Mr. Sullivan has been a problem resident since day one, consistently violating bylaws and showing disrespect for our community standards. Is it disrespectful to paint my door navy blue?" I asked, unable to stay quiet. "It's against the rules that weren't provided to me when I bought the house, and which apparently change at your whim. Did you or did you not direct your nephew to push snow against my garage door?" I directed him to help with snow removal for the neighborhood. Where he placed the snow was his professional judgment. Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. "That's interesting, because I spoke with Derek Crawford this afternoon. He provided a sworn statement saying that you specifically instructed him to push the snow against Mr. Sullivan's garage door as a lesson about proper snow placement. He was uncomfortable doing it, but you insisted. Would you like me to read his statement to the board?" The color drained from Brenda's face. Derek said that, under oath, with the threat of perjury charges if he lied, He's also cooperating fully with the insurance investigation. His insurance company is not happy that he engaged in deliberate property damage at someone else's direction. Susan Peltier, one of the board members, spoke up. "Brenda, is this true? Did you instruct Derek to damage Connor's property?" "I didn't say damage. I said to put the snow there because his snow pile was ugly and against the rules." "But you knew it would damage the garage door," Richard said quietly. "You had to know that several tons of snow pushed against a garage door would cause damage." "It was just snow. How was I supposed to know his door was so weak?" Marcus shook his head. "Mrs. Crawford, you just admitted to deliberately directing the placement of snow against Mr. Sullivan's garage door. That's all we needed to hear. The damage was foreseeable and intentional. You're liable for this, not just Derek." The room erupted in conversation. Several residents began sharing their own stories of Brenda's enforcement tactics. Tom Martinez stood up and described the snow shovel incident. A woman named Patricia told about being fined because her daughter's bicycle was visible in the garage when the door was open. Another man, James, explained that Brenda had threatened him with a lien over a Christmas wreath that stayed up until January 10th. The stories went on for 30 minutes. Richard finally called for order. "Okay, I think we've heard enough. The board needs to deliberate. We'll take a 15-minute recess and then we'll reconvene for a vote." During the recess, several residents came up to me to offer support. Patricia, the woman with the bicycle story, squeezed my shoulder. "Thank you for standing up to her. We should have done this a long time ago." When the board reconvened, Richard looked exhausted. After reviewing the evidence presented tonight and hearing from numerous residents, the board has decided to take the following actions. First, all fines issued to Connor Sullivan are hereby rescinded and refunded. Second, we are commissioning an independent review of all fines and enforcement actions taken over the past 2 years to ensure they were appropriate and consistently applied. Third, we are voting to remove Brenda Crawford as HOA president, effective immediately. The vote was 4-1, with only Brenda voting against her own removal. She stood up, her face red with anger and humiliation. "You'll regret this. I've dedicated 7 years to this community, keeping property values high and maintaining standards. Without me, this place will fall apart." "Brenda," Richard said gently, "you did good work for many years. But somewhere along the way you lost sight of the fact that we're a community, not a dictatorship. You need to step back." She grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The room let out a collective breath. Richard turned to me. "Connor, on behalf of the board, I apologize for what you've been through. We failed in our oversight responsibilities. That won't happen again." "I appreciate that," I said, "but I still have a damaged garage door and a lot of stress from the past 8 months. Understood? If there's anything the HOA can do to assist with the insurance claim or repairs, please let us know." Marcus and I left the meeting feeling cautiously optimistic. In the parking lot, he turned to me. "That went better than expected, but we're not done yet." "What do you mean?" "Derek's insurance will cover the property damage, but we should consider a civil suit against Brenda personally for harassment and emotional distress. The pattern of behavior, the admission of deliberately causing the damage, the financial stress she caused you. A jury might award significant damages." "I don't know," I said. "Part of me just wants this to be over. Think about it, talk to your wife, but don't wait too long. There are statutes of limitations on these things." Over the next week, things moved quickly. Derek's insurance company accepted full liability for the garage door damage and issued a check for $14,000 to cover the repairs, plus additional compensation for my inability to use the garage. The garage door company scheduled the installation for the following Monday. But Brenda wasn't done. 3 days after being removed as HOA president, I received a letter from her personal attorney threatening to sue me for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The letter claimed that I had orchestrated a campaign to ruin her reputation, that the video evidence was somehow misleading, and that she had suffered severe emotional trauma from being publicly humiliated at the board meeting. I showed the letter to Marcus, who actually laughed. "This is absurd. She's trying to intimidate you. Let me respond." His response was 2 paragraphs. It essentially said that truth is an absolute defense to defamation, that all evidence presented was accurate and obtained legally, and that any further frivolous legal threats would result in a countersuit for abuse of process. It worked. Brenda's attorney never contacted us again. The garage door installation went smoothly. The crew arrived at 8 in the morning, removed the damaged door and frame, and installed a beautiful new insulated steel door with a modern opener system. It actually looked better than the original door. When Jennifer came home from work that evening, she stood in the driveway admiring it. "Well, at least something good came out of this mess," she said. "That door must have cost a fortune. $14,000, all covered by insurance." Brenda's insurance premiums are going to be astronomical after this. But the story didn't end there. About 2 weeks after the door was installed, I received a call from Detective Sarah Morrison with the Naperville Police Department. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm calling about an incident involving Brenda Crawford and property damage to your residence. Do you have time to come down to the station and give a statement?" My stomach dropped. "Has something else happened?" "Not to you, but there have been several similar incidents in other neighborhoods in Naperville. We're investigating whether Mrs. Crawford was involved. Your case might be part of a larger pattern." I went to the police station that afternoon, where Detective Morrison explained the situation. Apparently, Brenda had been serving as HOA president or board member in 3 different subdivisions over the past 10 years, always on a volunteer basis. In each neighborhood, there had been mysterious property damage incidents involving residents who had violated HOA rules or challenged Brenda's authority. In one case, a resident's fence had been vandalized with paint. In another, someone's mailbox had been destroyed. In a third, landscaping plants had been deliberately killed with herbicide. None of these incidents were connected until recently, Detective Morrison explained. But when your case came to our attention through the insurance investigation, we started looking into Brenda Crawford's history. The pattern is clear. She has a history of retaliating against homeowners who cross her. So what happens now? We're building a case. We've interviewed several victims and witnesses. The evidence in your case is particularly strong because of the video footage and Derek Crawford's statement. We're considering charges of criminal property damage, criminal trespass, and potentially stalking if we can establish a pattern of harassment. Will I have to testify? Probably, yes, if this goes to trial, but I think once Mrs. Crawford's attorney sees the evidence we have, she'll likely accept a plea deal. I left the police station feeling strange. Part of me was satisfied that Brenda would face consequences for her actions, but another part of me felt almost sorry for her. She had clearly lost control somewhere along the way, letting her need for order and authority turn into something toxic and criminal. The criminal case moved slowly, as legal cases do. Over the next few months, I gave depositions, provided copies of all my documentation, and waited. The Meadowbrook Heights HOA, under new leadership from Richard Oakes, sent out a letter to all residents apologizing for the previous administration's overreach and announcing several reforms. They were revising the bylaws to include clearer appeals processes, term limits for board members, and regular audits of enforcement actions. In May, 3 months after the snow incident, Brenda Crawford accepted a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to criminal property damage and was sentenced to 2 years of probation, 100 hours of community service, and restitution payments to me and 3 other victims whose property she had damaged in previous years. She was also banned from serving on any HOA board in Illinois for 10 years. The restitution was $5,000, intended to cover my legal fees, time off work, and general stress. It wasn't much, but it felt like justice. The money arrived in June, a cashier's check with no note, no apology, nothing. Just the payment as required by the court. Life in Meadowbrook Heights gradually returned to normal. The new HOA board under Richard's leadership was reasonable and fair. They enforced rules when necessary, but did so with common sense and communication. The neighborhood felt friendlier, less tense. Several residents told me they were grateful that someone had finally stood up to Brenda's tyranny. My navy blue front door remained navy blue, and nobody said a word about it. In fact, 2 other neighbors painted their doors different colors as well, a quiet rebellion that the new board approved without issue. The rules were revised to allow any tasteful and well-maintained color, a refreshing change from the previous rigid list. Jennifer and I celebrated our first anniversary in the house that summer with a barbecue in the backyard. Tom Martinez came over with his wife. Patricia brought her family, and several other neighbors stopped by. We stood in the garage, admiring the door that had caused so much trouble. "You know what?" Tom said, raising his beer. "I propose a toast to Connor for having the courage to stand up to a bully, and to new garage doors." Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. To new garage doors. As the summer went on, I reflected on everything that had happened. The whole ordeal had been stressful, expensive in terms of time and emotional energy, and frustrating beyond belief. But it had also revealed something important about community and standing up for yourself. Brenda Crawford had counted on people being too intimidated, too busy, or too conflict-averse to challenge her. For years it had worked, but eventually someone had to say enough. I received a letter in July from Derek Crawford, Brenda's nephew. It was handwritten, which surprised me. "Dear Mr. Sullivan, I wanted to apologize personally for my role in damaging your property. I should have refused to follow my aunt's instructions, but I was trying to help her and didn't think through the consequences. My insurance premiums tripled because of this incident, and I lost several clients who didn't want to work with someone involved in property damage. I deserved all of that. But more than the financial consequences, I learned an important lesson about doing what's right even when it's difficult or when family is involved. I'm sorry for what happened, and I hope your garage door is working well. Sincerely, Derek Crawford." I appreciated the letter. It showed genuine remorse and accountability, something Brenda herself had never expressed. I wrote back, a brief note accepting his apology and wishing him well with his business. People made mistakes, and Derek had at least owned his. The Illinois HOA reform story made local news in August. Several journalists had picked up on the Meadowbrook Heights situation and Brenda's criminal case, and it sparked a broader conversation about HOA accountability and oversight. State legislators introduced a bill that would require HOAs to carry liability insurance, implement mandatory appeals processes, and submit to external audits if complaints reached a certain threshold. The bill didn't pass in that session, but it started an important conversation. I was interviewed for one of the news pieces, which aired on a Chicago ABC affiliate station. The reporter, a young woman named Michelle Torres, asked me what I would say to other homeowners dealing with overzealous HOAs. "Document everything," I said. "Keep records, take photos, save emails. If you know something wrong is happening, don't ignore it or hope it goes away. Find a good lawyer who understands HOA law and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Communities should enhance our lives, not make them miserable." The interview got some attention on social media, with people sharing their own HOA horror stories. Some were funny, like the person whose HOA banned gnomes from yards. Others were heartbreaking, like elderly residents being threatened with foreclosure over minor violations they couldn't physically fix. The stories reinforced how much power HOAs held and how easily that power could be abused. By the time fall arrived, the whole incident felt like ancient history, even though it had only been 8 months. The leaves changed color, the weather cooled, and life went on. My garage door worked perfectly, opening and closing smoothly every day, a constant reminder of what I had been through. In October, the Meadowbrook Heights HOA held its annual meeting and election of board members. I attended, curious to see how things had changed. The meeting was well attended, with maybe 40 residents showing up. Richard Oakes gave a report on the year's activities, including the reforms implemented after Brenda's removal. He was re-elected as president, along with a mostly new board. The community voted to reduce the fine structure, implement a warning system before fines were issued, and create a residents' advisory committee to provide feedback on HOA decisions. During the open comment period, Tom Martinez stood up. "I just want to say that this past year, despite the difficulty of what happened, has made our community stronger. We learned that we have a voice, that we can challenge authority when it's wrong, and that working together makes us better. I'm proud to live in Meadowbrook Heights." There was applause, genuine and warm. I felt a lump in my throat. Community was supposed to feel like this, supportive and collaborative, not adversarial and punitive. After the meeting, Richard pulled me aside. "Connor, I want to thank you again. What you did, standing up to Brenda, it changed this place. We were headed down a really dark path. You stopped it." "I didn't do it alone," I said. "A lot of people helped, and honestly, I didn't want to be the hero of the story. I just wanted to live in my house in peace." Sometimes being the hero means doing the right thing even when it's hard. You did that. Winter came around again, and with it, the inevitable snow. The first big storm hit in early December, dumping about 18 inches overnight. I got up early to clear the driveway, my snowblower cutting neat paths through the white. When I finished, I made sure to place the snow pile well onto my lawn, away from the street and sidewalk. I was just finishing up when Tom came out with his snowblower. We worked together to clear his driveway, then helped Patricia down the street with hers. It became an impromptu neighborhood snow removal party, with about 6 of us working together, laughing and joking despite the cold. Someone brought out thermoses of coffee and hot chocolate. It felt good, the way neighbors helping neighbors was supposed to feel. As I stood in my driveway, drinking coffee and watching the sun come up over the snow-covered subdivision, I thought about everything that had happened over the past year. The harassment, the property damage, the legal battles, the reforms, the community building. It had been one of the most stressful experiences of my life, but also one of the most meaningful. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Heard on the news there's a big snow day. Schools might be canceled. Want me to work from home so we can build a snowman?" I smiled and texted back. "Absolutely. I'll start gathering materials." The garage door opened smoothly as I put the snowblower away, the new motor humming efficiently. I patted the door frame affectionately. $14,000, all because an HOA president couldn't handle someone having a snow pile on their own lawn. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so damaging. But we had survived it, even thrived in some ways. The community was better, the rules were fairer, and my garage door was top of the line. Silver linings, I supposed. Jennifer came home around 10, and we spent the afternoon building an enormous snowman in the front yard. We gave him a carrot nose, button eyes, and a plaid scarf. As we were finishing, Patricia's kids came over to help, and soon we had a whole snow family. Several neighbors stopped to admire our work, and nobody mentioned HOA rules or violations or proper snow placement. That evening, as Jennifer and I sat by the fireplace, exhausted and happy, she asked me if I had any regrets about how we handled the Brenda situation. I thought about it carefully. No, I finally said. I mean, I wish it hadn't happened at all, but once it did, I'm glad we stood up for ourselves. We could have just paid the fines, stayed quiet, maybe even moved away. But that wouldn't have been right. Brenda would have kept abusing her power and other people would have suffered. Do you think she learned anything from it? I honestly don't know. The fact that she never apologized makes me think probably not. Some people can't admit when they're wrong, but at least she can't hurt anyone else now, at least not through an HOA. Jennifer nodded, staring into the fire. I was so angry when this was all happening. But now, I'm mostly just relieved it's over, and grateful we have such good neighbors. Me too. The next few months passed peacefully. We celebrated the holidays without any HOA drama, enjoyed the new year, and gradually forgot about checking our mailbox nervously for violation notices. The anxiety that had been a constant companion during Brenda's reign slowly faded away. In March, almost exactly 1 year after the snow incident, I received an unexpected package. It was from a law firm in Chicago, but not Marcus Webb's office. Inside was a letter and a check for $2,300. The letter explained that Brenda Crawford's insurance company had overpaid on the initial claim and was refunding the excess. Additionally, there was a settlement payment related to a class action suit against the insurance company for improper rate increases. The money was mine to keep. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the check, and started laughing. Jennifer came in to see what was funny. What is it? More money from the garage door incident. Between this and the restitution from Brenda, we actually came out ahead financially. You're kidding. Nope, that garage door paid for itself and then some. We decided to use the money to take a vacation, something we had been too stressed and financially stretched to do during the HOA drama. In April, we spent a week in San Diego enjoying the beach, the sunshine, and the complete absence of HOA regulations. It was glorious. When we returned, tanned and relaxed, I felt like the whole ordeal was finally, truly over. The garage door was just a door again, not a symbol of injustice and conflict. The neighborhood was just a neighborhood, a place where we lived and knew our neighbors and enjoyed our lives. One Saturday in May, I was working in the garage, organizing tools when Tom Martinez knocked on the open door. Hey Connor, got a minute? Sure, what's up? The HOA board is looking for a new member. Susan Peltier is moving to Arizona. We wondered if you'd be interested in serving. I almost laughed. Me, on the HOA board, after everything that happened, especially after everything that happened. You understand better than anyone how important it is to keep HOA power in check, to treat residents fairly, to be reasonable. We need people like you making decisions. I considered it. The idea of serving on the HOA board would have been unthinkable a year ago, when the organization represented nothing but stress and harassment. But now, with good people running it, with reformed rules and accountable leadership, maybe it could be different. Can I think about it? Of course. Talk to Jennifer. No pressure either way, but I hope you'll consider it. That evening, I discussed it with Jennifer. To my surprise, she thought it was a good idea. You'd be good at it. You care about doing things right, you're fair-minded, and you actually read the fine print on things. Plus, it would make sure nothing like the Brenda situation ever happens again. It's a lot of work, though. Meetings, emails, dealing with neighbor complaints. True. But you'd be helping people, making the community better. Isn't that worth something? She was right. It was worth something. I sent an email to Richard Oakes the next day, accepting the position. I was appointed to fill Susan's vacant seat and would stand for election at the next annual meeting. My first board meeting was in June. We discussed standard issues, landscaping contracts, playground maintenance, budget reviews. It was all surprisingly mundane and reasonable. No talk of fining residents for minor violations, no aggressive enforcement tactics, just practical community management. This was what an HOA was supposed to be. During that meeting, we reviewed a violation case. A resident had built a small storage shed without submitting the required architectural approval form. Under Brenda's regime, this would have resulted in immediate fines and demands for removal. Instead, we looked at the shed through photos the resident had submitted. It's well built and matches the house, David Chang observed. It's not an eyesore. The rules say sheds require pre-approval, Margaret Wheeler pointed out. But they don't say what to do if approval wasn't sought beforehand. Richard looked at the bylaws. We can grant retroactive approval if the structure meets our standards. It clearly does. I propose we send a letter reminding the resident about the approval process for future projects, grant approval for this shed, and move on. Everyone agreed. It took 5 minutes, and nobody was fined or threatened. The resident was happy. The HOA maintained its standards and common sense prevailed. This was how it should work. Over the summer, I settled into the role. I helped review a few other cases, all handled with fairness and communication. I worked on updating the HOA website to make rules and processes clearer. I organized a neighborhood barbecue to bring residents together. It felt good to be part of building something positive rather than fighting against something negative. In August, I was walking to my mailbox when I saw a moving truck at Brenda's house. She was leaving, relocating somewhere else. I watched the movers carry furniture out, and I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Relief that she was gone, satisfaction that justice had been served, but also a strange sadness that it had come to this. As I stood there, Brenda came out of the house carrying a box. She saw me and froze for a moment. Then she set the box down and walked over. I tensed, unsure what to expect. "Connor," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology." I was too stunned to respond immediately. "I've spent the past year in therapy," she continued. "Court-mandated initially, but I kept going because I needed it. I've had to confront some hard truths about myself, about why I acted the way I did. I was wrong. I was cruel and I abused the power I had. I'm sorry for what I did to you, to your property, and to this community." "Thank you for saying that," I managed. "It means something. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I understand now how wrong I was. I hope you and your wife are happy here." She walked back to her house, picked up the box, and disappeared inside. The movers continued their work. By evening, the house was empty, and Brenda Crawford was gone from Meadowbrook Heights. I told Jennifer about the encounter that night. "Do you believe her?" she asked. "I think so. She seemed genuine. Therapy can change people if they're willing to do the work." "Good for her then, really. I hope she finds peace wherever she's going." "Me too." The rest of the year passed smoothly. Fall brought beautiful colors to the subdivision trees. Halloween was a joy, with dozens of kids trick-or-treating and no HOA rules about decoration limits or curfews. Thanksgiving found us hosting dinner for several neighbors who had become genuine friends. Christmas lights went up throughout the neighborhood in a variety of styles and colors, a rainbow of celebration with no enforcement of uniformity. In December, during the annual HOA meeting, I stood for election to a full board term. I gave a brief speech about my vision for the HOA: fair enforcement, clear communication, community building, and always remembering that rules serve people, not the other way around. I was elected with overwhelming support. As the meeting concluded and residents mingled over cookies and coffee, I looked around the community center at my neighbors. These were good people who just wanted to live their lives, raise their families, and enjoy their homes. They didn't need someone with a clipboard and a power complex making them miserable. They needed support, fairness, and community. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Webb. "Saw the news about your election to the HOA board. Congratulations. Let me know if you need any HOA legal advice in your new role. First consultation is free for former clients who gave me such an easy case to win." I smiled and texted back my thanks. The whole experience had been surreal, from harassment victim to board member in less than 2 years. But it felt right. I understood the system now, its potential for abuse and its capacity for good. I could help ensure it stayed on the right path. That night, as I pulled my car into the garage, I paused to appreciate the smooth operation of the door. It had been nearly 2 years since Brenda had ordered tons of snow pushed against it, causing $14,000 in damage that her insurance eventually paid. The door was better now, stronger and more efficient. In a way, the community was too. We had survived a tyrant, reformed our systems, and built something better from the wreckage. My garage door was more than just a door. It was a reminder that standing up to injustice mattered, that communities could heal and improve, and that insurance companies really did come through sometimes when you had solid evidence. Jennifer came out to the garage as I was heading inside. "You're smiling. What are you thinking about?" "Just appreciating this door and everything that came from it." She laughed and took my hand. "Only you would get philosophical about a garage door. It's a really nice garage door." "It is. Now come inside. Dinner is ready and I don't want it to get cold." We walked into the house together, the garage door closing smoothly behind us, and I realized I was genuinely happy. The past 2 years had been challenging, frustrating, and at times infuriating, but we had made it through. We had stood our ground, fought for what was right, and come out stronger on the other side. The HOA Karen had pushed snow against my garage, her insurance had paid for my new door, and in the end, justice had prevailed. Not just legal justice, but community justice. The kind that makes neighborhoods better, relationships stronger, and garage doors smoother. And every time I pressed the button to open that door, hearing the quiet hum of the motor and watching the panels glide up effortlessly, I was reminded that sometimes the right thing to do is also the hard thing to do. But it's always worth it. Life in Meadowbrook Heights continued peacefully. The seasons changed, neighbors came and went, and the HOA functioned as it should, a helpful organization that maintained property values and community standards without tyranny or abuse. My role on the board was rewarding, giving me a chance to help people and prevent the kind of overreach that had plagued us before. And my garage door, that $14,000 symbol of standing up to bullies and fighting for justice, continued to work perfectly, day after day, year after year. It was, without question, the best garage door in the entire subdivision. Not because it was the most expensive or the most technologically advanced, but because every time I saw it, I remembered what we had overcome and how far we had come. That door represented resilience, justice, and the simple but powerful truth that ordinary people could stand up to abuse and win. In the end, that was worth far more than $14,000.